Hello and welcome to another episode of the Turn Up the Volume podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the critical conversations and actions needed to create a more equitable and inclusive audio industry. I'm Nayo Anya, your host and audio equity champion from the Yorkshire Sound Women Network. Today, we're tackling a topic that's fundamental to fairness in any industry, and that is pay. In this episode, we're focusing on the fourth strand of our Volume Up framework that's been put together to support businesses and organisations in becoming more gender equitable. The framework ensures that women and people of marginalised genders are paid fairly. Pay is not just about numbers on a paycheck, it's about value, respect, and economic power to sustain a creative career. We'll hear from four of our wonderful guests who have navigated the complexities of pay in the music and audio industry. And we'll also look at some statistics that highlight the work that still needs to be done to close the gender pay gap. Let's start with Nali. I asked what her biggest win was as she's made her own way in the audio and sound industry.
I think the biggest win for me was becoming self-employed and being able to be like, yes, I do music full time. I grew up not particularly wealthy. I'm not a trust fund kid. I've, had to really work hard for everything that I have. Everyone has their own journey. But for me, when I was in my normal job, I saved up, I guess, enough to get me through the next 6 months in terms of rent and bills. I had that saved up. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to see what happens in the next 6 months. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. I'll just get another job. But I've got this kind of buffer where I can now take this 6 months to really focus on music and doing that and see how it turns out. It wasn't like I just did it with nothing going on. I'd obviously been working towards doing that. Like I was doing music a lot in my spare time. I was releasing stuff. I was doing a lot of content stuff. I'd built up my following and community online. So it wasn't like I just did it out of nowhere. Like I was actually working towards it. But yeah, it was very much like a leap of faith. I think also it got to a point where I was getting a lot of bookings. I was getting gigs coming in. I was, being asked to do paid content, like paid partnerships and stuff online. And I was actually having to turn down music work because I had to be at my normal job. And that was the kind of point where I was like, okay, that's not the right balance for me. So that was a deal breaker. It's quite hard, I think, especially in the creative industry, if you don't have that backing behind you in terms of wealth or family connections or anything like that, it's quite hard to actually do it yourself and become a full-time music producer. Like I was working normal day jobs for a really long time and then having to balance doing music outside of that. And so to be able to actually be like, oh, okay, most of my income comes from music and I can support myself and stuff, it's quite a big step for me because I always wanted to do music, but I really struggled to fit into like a normal routine of having like a normal job and stuff. And so I think a lot of creatives, you'll be able to relate to that, where it's quite hard to get up and do like a really mundane job. The only thing that you want to be doing really is making music. And so, yeah, I just really love the fact that I can wake up every day and be like, today I'm going to make a new beat or I'm going to work on a track or whatever.
Nali reminds us of the challenges that many face when stepping into self-employment. It's not easy to make money in the creative industry. Without the structure of an employer, ensuring fair pay can be even more difficult. Emily, one of our YSWN associates, also touched on this when she submitted a response to our Turn Up the Volume campaign, which is still open to all women and people of minority genders who want to share their experiences of working in the audio and sound industry. If you want to, head to our website, www.yorkshiresoundwomen.com, to find out how to get involved.
One thing that's really helped me succeed in making music education into a career is the Yorkshire Sound Women's Network. Prior to getting involved with the Sound Women, I'd done a few things for free with Ableton Live, music production, live looping and stuff. And my first ever paid session was with the Yorkshire Sound Women's Network. And that gave me such a confidence boost. Firstly, the fact of preparing and delivering a workshop and it going well was amazing. And to be paid a normal industry rate for that helped me to then expect to be paid for future work, because this can be really hard as a freelancer, having to negotiate every time. And, we should be paid industry standard rates, even if we enjoy it, even if we do music as a hobby. Work is work. So, yeah, that first experience of delivering a workshop was really important step for me and made me think like, yes, I can do this as a job. And also at that same event, I met Lena Turtinen, and we actually ended up working together. We started a company together in like teaching music production. And that was also a really big learning experience. So the networking aspect and the community and becoming then a Yorkshire Sound Women Associate was also a really big step for me and very supportive.
Emily's point about the necessity of getting paid ties into a larger conversation about finding organisations that truly support you. Laura spoke about how beneficial it is to align yourself with those who not only recognise your worth, but are willing to compensate you fairly for the work that you do. What would you say to someone from a marginalised background or a minority gender person who's actually looking at getting into this industry when we know what it is to be in this industry?
I think it's about really finding somebody that you trust. So it's about finding an ally and obviously not letting it stop there. But when you found that trust and you find a place where you can feel like you can connect and feel a sense of as much of a belonging as you can to start with, but to know that actually there's a company, like, because I feel like there are companies that that want to make change. There are companies that that they may just need some of that support in knowing what to do and how to kind of implement those. So I think there are some where you can quite quickly feel that there's a resistance. So, park that, let that come in the kind of next phase of sort of integration. So I think it's about finding that person that you trust, that organisation that you trust.
There might be spaces which aren't ready actually yet, that might think that they're ready, but actually aren't ready. But it's just about being able to say, do your research of your organizations, do your research of the places that you're going into and kind of think, is this somewhere that I'm going to be able to feel like I can be my authentic self? And if not, like you're saying, just say, okay, that's not for me right now, because it's going to be too much emotional labor to go and try and do that. But it doesn't mean that there's not a space for you, because I think that can be sometimes something as well. If you don't see, if you can't find the right one immediately, it's like, oh, well, then maybe this isn't for me. And I think there always is. It's just sometimes it does take some time and research.
Yeah. But also I think, it is about finding your external community as well. It's about finding that support network that is outside of that company, maybe. So, the Saffrons, the Beauty Base, it's like, but there will be people out there, whether that's in an online space, if that's within your, regional community, like it's about finding them and finding that support that like lifts you up to keep you steady in that space where you feel vulnerable. Like I think because there are those questions that you can ask, you can be like, okay, is it all right if my colleague asked me about those things? Or, contractually, is that okay that I'm on a freelance policy and this is happening and I don't feel safe in this? So I think, finding those communities that help you to stay in the space so that you can thrive and make yourself be there and make yourself be present and not have to shy away.
And I think it is so true that there are so many spaces now, whether it be physically or, like you say, whether it be online, there are spaces where we can actually go and ask those questions, where actually before that was part of the issue, was that no one was talking about how much they were getting paid, or no one was talking about the fact that, there wasn't a sexual harassment policy, and no one was talking about these things. Whereas now, although the statistics might not have changed as much, we'd like, actually there's a lot more in place now that we can say, actually, that's not what I want. That's not a space that I want to be in.
Yeah.
Laura's advice on seeking supportive organisations is important when it comes to setting up your own networks that align with your values and make you feel safe. But it's also part of a broader shift we're seeing in the industry. As Isabel from Girls Twiddling Knobs also mentions, there's much more ability to talk about inequality now. She also shared an important reminder that not everyone's goal is to make a living solely from their art. And that's also okay.
There's never been a better time to get into it than now for marginalised musicians. It's so much better now than when I was, say, 18 back in 2002. And obviously it was better than it had been before then, but there's never been a better time than now. There are some incredible organisations out there. Obviously, Girls Twiddling Knobs, if you're a woman or non-binary person wanting to get into music tech, but Yorkshire Sound Women Network, Cactus City Studios, there's just so many different organisations now that are doing wonderful things. Key Change for PRS Foundation, all of those different things. Those things didn't exist before. And actually, up until about 5 years ago, there was very, very, very little. So that's the first thing I say is you're entering it at a great time, especially in comparison to previous decades and previous generations. The other thing I'd say is you have a lot more power now than you did, because people are much more aware of the issue of, balance and diversity and inclusion. It's not always in enough, in the way that we'd like them to be, but you have more power in that sense. About 10, 20 years ago, if you even raised women in music or feminism, that could be a career ender. And that is not so much the case anymore. And in fact, it can really elevate your career if you make noise about that stuff now, which is totally new. So again, that's way better. As you go through different phases in your life, things start to kind of make sense, and then you hit another phase and you would think, I don't understand any of the decisions I've made. What the hell have I been doing? But I think that what I'm kind of understanding is I don't think I ever would have been happy as a kind of pro full-time musician. I think I've always been someone who is first and foremost dedicated to learning and education and being in a space where that is the primary focus. I don't think I necessarily just want to make any music and sound all day, every day, and have all of my income made from that and my whole life be about that for that sake, if that makes sense. And I think that that's just my DNA. And I think that could be because of growing up in an environment where both of my parents, that was their career, but not just their career, like their vocation, their passion. Both of them went above and beyond their salary, which was always way less than if they'd done something else. My mum was always in her chair in the dining room prepping for lessons the next day. Like, my whole experience growing up was very much about creativity, education, learning, and that the adventure of that, and doing that for its own sake, because that is that is the whole point of being alive.
Passion drives many of us in the industry, but pay is still a fundamental part of the equation if you want to make your living solely from music. But it can also just be fundamental in knowing your worth and making sure that you choose projects and work with people who are going to respect that worth, whether you're trying to make a living solely off your creativity or not. According to Black Lives in Music, Only 38% of Black music professionals earn 100% of their income from music, compared to 69% of white music professionals. This disparity reflects broader issues around access and opportunity in the industry. Gender pay gaps are a glaring issue. The Jaguar Foundation points out that these gaps are often linked to women's biological roles in bearing children and the cultural expectations of motherhood. After £34,000, men report higher earnings from music than both women and minority-gendered people. According to the Musicians Census Financial Insight Report from September 2023, when it comes to higher earnings, the disparity becomes even more pronounced. 79% of musicians earning £70,000 or more each year are men, with just 19% being women. The lack of flexible working, matched with work not being paid properly, has meant many feel they have an impossible choice to make between having a family or doing a job they enjoy and have spent years building a career in. A quote from a young female musician in the Musicians Union report really drives this home when she says, "A lot of gig opportunities I see are not paid. And this is simply not sustainable or worth it, as musicians need to earn a living like everyone else." It's a harsh reality that too many in our industry face. And it's something that we have to address when we think about how to make the field equitable. Ensuring fair pay across the board is not just a financial issue, it's a matter of equity and respect, which we need in the future of our industry. If we want to see it thrive with diversity of thought and creativity, we must address these pay disparities head on. Which is why we're inviting you to take the next step with us on our Volume Up framework. This strand focuses on pay. It's to help your company make sure that women and people of marginalised genders are paid fairly for their work. One thing that you could do is implement a gender equality pay policy that ensures transparency and fairness across the board. You could even publish your company's gender pay statistics as a way to show people coming into your organisation that this has really been thought about. When you commit to fair pay, you're not just improving your company's practices, you're contributing to a broader movement. By signing up for the Volume Up standard and taking these pledges, you're making a statement that fair pay is non-negotiable, and you're showing that you've taken the time and thought to change things in order to make your space one that supports gender equity. To dive deeper into the pay gaps we've discussed, check out the Black Lives in Music report, the Jaguar Foundation report, and the Musicians Union Financial Insight report. And of course, you can download our wider toolkit for free off the Yorkshire Sound Women Network website. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Next time, we'll be looking at strand number 5, progression and professional development. Until then, let's keep pushing for a future when everyone's work is valued and paid fairly. Thank you to our guests, Laura, founder of Saffron Records, Isabel, founder of Girls Twiddling Knobs, Emily, and Nali. Make sure to go and give them a follow on all their social medias and support the great work they do to continue pushing for gender equity. Thank you also to Rosa UK, a grant-making charity that funds women's and girls' organisations working to make the UK a fairer, safer place, without whom we wouldn't have been able to create this podcast. I'm Nayo Anya, your podcast host, scripter and director, and audio equity champion at YSWN. Thank you to our editor, Joe Kennedy, and Sarah Statham, who has provided the music, both of whom are YSWN associates. To find out more about what we do, head to our website, www.yorkshiresoundwomen.com. See you next time.